problems with the streamer, but for now I think it should be alright. If this goes down again, then we'll execute emergency protocols. So, FC talk on how to start as a beginner FC. It's a big question for many players in EVE, and honestly, it's a tough one if you don't know how to do it. So, to start off, we'll go with the presentation of who you guys will be hearing from. I'll start from the list. So we got Yngvarr here. Say hello, Yngvarr.
What's up, sorry?
Yngvarr is spacing off. So I'm presenting the guys right now. You got Yngvarr right here. Say hello to the followers on stream.
Hey guys.
You have Malix Phoenix as well.
Hello.
Iredude.
Hello.
And our special guest tonight is Esildra from Dytron from Fatal Ascension. Hey Esildra.
Hello.
So I'll start by asking everyone to go and present themselves in the same order that I presented them. Just give us a few background about what you did before and what you do as a fleet commander. Go ahead, Yngvarr.
I started off by FCing pretty much in nullsec about a month after I started the game. Just in a rent-a-corp in 2006. Then I carried on, got into bigger coalitions, alliances. FC big like capital fleets and stuff, and then sold that character and quit the game for a little bit. And then I popped back and put an alt in RvB, and I've basically FC'd RvB for the last 3 years, half on a main, half on a alt. And I do a lot of like FCing small gangs in low sec and stuff like that.
Nice. Malus, go ahead.
Alright, I'm relatively new to the whole FC game. Basically only do it in RvB with a few minor fleets and like other corps with alts that were mostly like mining protection related. But yeah, I mostly exist in RvB to pick up whenever Ying dies or if one of the other guys die. I don't really lead the fleets much myself. I try to stake more of a backup only because I don't like herding cats. Sorry, I'm docking now. What else do I do? Every now and again, like if there's no one else on, I'll take over and whatnot. Luckily, I'm on in a time zone that there's usually somebody else to do it. I still consider myself fairly new to the whole thing, like I said, so not all that comfortable, but at least like I'm more than willing to get on and call targets that are of high priority. So it's kind of what I do.
This is Iredude, so similar to Malus. Relatively new to FCing, been in RvB for about a year. Before that, I was an industrial for the most part. Did spend a little time in MPC Null in Syndicate. That was pretty fun, but then I went back to industrial and joined RvB about a year ago. FC'd a few times. Definitely only a handful compared to people like Yngvarr, so I'm here to absorb some of his knowledge.
And I am Esildra. I am a coalition FC for the CFC, and I have been in other blocks before that are currently red to the CFC. And I FC everything from battleships, capitals, and supercaps.
Alright, my name is Corniel. I have started 3 years ago as a fleet commander, started with a Kyber alliance that is now dead. I mingled my way through several alliances, and not too long ago met Esildra in the defense of Delve with Test. Apparently we're not picking any sounds. Now, some people are picking sounds. The fly toast sky is not the picking sound. Alright, that sounds good. It's just a few people then. So as it was going on, I can fleet command pretty much everything battleship down. Yeah, after you guys refresh, you can hear sounds. You've pretty much missed the whole introduction, but that's alright. You can hear it later on. Yeah, there you go, sound. Yeah, that's me typing, Jesus, boy. My microphone is quite sensitive, so if you hear some background noise, I'll try to keep it to a minimum. There you go, I should be transmitting on Mumble as well. So, yeah, I've been a fleet commander through several alliances, made my way down, and got tired of the consistent structure grinding, so I decided to go down to RvB and started to keep going at it, and it's quite entertaining. I think the first step of flying as a fleet commander is just starting a fleet, so what are you guys' tips on your first fleet ever?
Corniel, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think anybody can hear you in Mumble. You're only broadcasting to the stream, so I have to like unmute the stream to hear what you're saying.
And I don't know if the stream
Hello.
can hear anybody but Corniel.
Can you guys hear me? Is anyone able to hear me? We're having some troubles with the voice right now, so just hang on while we're fixing it. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Alright. Big fail of the day. Simple story, let me just say it. I was actually coughing and I muted my microphone and I did not realize that it was still muted. So, first fail of the stream, I was speaking with my muted microphone, that's the whole story. So as I was going on, I'll just repeat myself. I started in a Care Bear Alliance. Started there FCing. The Care Bear Alliance is now dead, so it's irrelevant. Then I moved on through several different alliances, making my way and learning what I could from each of those alliances. And I ended up meeting Esildra back in Last Defense of Dale from Test Alliance, and at the same time when Test when Test was still about to crash. Then we went separated ways, and I found myself loving RvB and the consistent PvP that occurs every day. So I think the best thing to go about it is how does one non-fleet commander starts by becoming a fleet commander, and I think that transition comes when you start with your first fleet. So how does one starts his first fleet, and what are the pro tips that you guys would give them?
I'd just say make a fleet, grab your testicles and just go for it. Don't be scared of losing people's ships, it's not really a big deal. If you make mistakes, you learn from them, just don't be afraid.
Yeah,
It's a very simple thing to do. I'd say sit in on a couple of more experienced FC's fleets first, and then it's pretty easy to mimic the basics.
Indeed, if you have, a little feel about how a fleet goes, if you listen in to a couple other people, and, maybe you can do some stuff for them. bother them a little bit. Like, hey, can I do something for you? Can I do the anchoring? Can I do the target calling? And, you know, you just fall into being an FC yourself, doing your own pings, making your own fleet.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you're not super confident with it, just start small. Like, take out some little frigate gangs, whatever. Just get a feel for moving people around, sorting your fleet out, putting adverts up, and then just escalate it as you feel confident, really.
Definitely the fear, I think, is the biggest deal for everybody. The fear of being rejected from the fleet. I mean, also, should an FC or starting FC start, well, be afraid of being rejected by the fleet, and have you guys ever experienced that?
In RvB, I think people are quite accepting of new FCs. I find that the people who get rejected most in RvB are the like ex-Nullsec Alliance FCs who think they know everything and just kind of go in, take control, and deploy what would be Nullsec FCing tactics to RvB. And everyone kind of slaps him a bit.
Great. Any inputs, Iredude Malus?
Yeah, definitely in one of my earlier FCing attempts, definitely had a guy rage quite a bit after he got landed on. After the fleet warped, he did not. So he raged and bailed out. But, you know, I mean, it's going to happen. People are going to start raging sometimes on your fleets. But if they're a disruption, just get rid of them. Yeah, I don't have any problem kicking people out of the fleet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't care about anybody else's feelings. So if you're going to rage and whatnot, then you probably don't belong in EVE. And there's a famous PL dude that said maybe you should just go chill and play some Chivalry or something like that. But I was nervous the first couple times, mostly because I was new and didn't really actually know all of the subcaps. So I spent a lot of time learning what each one was, and mostly reading, like, you know, EVE Uni wikis and whatnot, and looking up some common fits. But even that is just like, screw it. At some point, you just have to start calling shit. And even if it's just call the stuff closest to you, you know, make sure everyone's in like a brawling ship. Tell them like, hey, I'm new. We're gonna brawl. I'm just gonna pick the closest targets and we're gonna go at it. If that's the way you have to start, then just do it.
Yeah, and doing it that way too actually is good for a lot of the newer PvP players, because, you know, if they're just going to simply anchor up on the FC and shoot, you know, whatever they call it, it's a lot easier for them to get used to fleets, get used to flying around, get used to losing ships for that matter.
Great. And I mean, after you have your fleet formed, I think it's a good thing to talk about what ships a fleet commander should be flying, because obviously he shouldn't be flying the same ship than all of his fleet members. He should be flying the same range, not the same type of tank, not the same type of agility.
Well, the same type of tank, yes. You don't want to, you know, FC a shield fleet from an armor tank.
Obviously.
But, yeah, sure. If you're gonna fly something that is a little bit more tanky, usually when the main FC dies, there's always this, you know, small little period between you dying and the next one taking over, and whole fleets have been lost in those periods of time. So the less you have to, you know, do that and have that time, the better it is. So, you know, obviously the main job of an FC ship is to keep him alive the longest.
And this varies from nullsec experience, from what Esildra is having, and RvB experience, where in RvB we go by this gentleman rule of not primarying the enemy FC, although it does happen sometimes. But assuming in nullsec you will have the different possibilities of having your name being watchlist by all the logistics, and having a ship that's mainly focused on tank and range, so you're able to observe the whole grid and stay on the grid alive even if you're getting primaried by the enemy fleet.
Yeah, and because of that special RvB exception to this rule, you don't want to be flying the gankiest ship out there, because I know me personally, I will call you primary and shoot you. So you want something with a lot of tank that you're not going to be, you know, the most dangerous thing on the field, because that's just kind of being a dick.
Great. Any recommendations or your favorite fleet ships to FCing?
I think this is a good point to bring up the. I know people get pissed off at me a lot of the time because I fit a long point on my FC ship. And I think it's probably worth having a discussion whether you should tackle or not in RvB as the FC. Because I know it gets some people's backup.
I think so. I mean, I definitely run with long point on my ship as well.
Yeah, same here.
Same here. When I see, our version of the Baltec fleet, which is basically a battleship doctrine, I usually fly from either a Damnation, which is a command ship, or I fly from a Proteus, which is a T3. And the Proteus has a bonus to, point range, and with the proper, faction fit, you get a very high range on your point. Which, for the nullsec fights is usually more needed than anything else.
Making sure that primary stays on the grid. Great. I think personally, if there has been some discussion in RvB whether if the FC is tackling you, should you be shooting at him or should you be just tanking it and dying while at it? I think that's something we won't get everyone agreeing on. It's quite a controversial thing in RvB, but I mean, if the FC takes the responsibility, because he does press the button, so I think you should be allowed to shoot back and defend yourself until he stops tackling you, then you can warp off.
Yep, I always tell my fleet, if the FC is the only person tackling you, feel free to slap him.
I do the same, except I usually preface it by, if the FC has you tackled and he's the only thing you can shoot. If you can't shoot the primary, then you can shoot back. Though I have found that tends to give everyone carte blanche to just shoot the FC. And I actually think Corniel the other night, it was you versus me, and my guys posted your kill mod, and I was like, what the fuck, guys? I never told you to shoot him. And I think they used the excuse, well, he had me tackled. It's like, well, guys, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
tricky to police.
Most FCs are gonna do a long point, so I'm just burn away from them. You should be okay for the most part.
I always put a short point on my maulers. I'm gonna keep close. Okay, so you have your fleet, you have your ships that you're gonna be flying. Then, what type of ships should your fleet be flying? Let's put it in the other side. Should you be calling for a specific doctrine if you can? Or should you just start off with a whole kitchen sink and bring whatever people feel comfortable to be in? I know in RvB it always ends up being half kitchen sink, half doctrine. But definitely in the nullsec realm, if you're looking at doing a roam, you might want to be looking at doing a doctrine since it's going to be more effective. But should you still be trying the kitchen sink to get more numbers and get more people interested?
Well, in nullsec we do allow a big variety of ship types in our fleets. We have a multi-element fleets with the logistics, the dictors, DPS, etc., etc. So with a logi, if you can't fly a doctrine logi, which is a T2 one, then we're always accepting T1 logi as well. Anything is better than nothing, kind of thing. Also with our current doctrine, the Baltecs, which is the most known at the moment, 1,000 megathrons kind of thing. We also allow APOCs and other ships in as well. So there is some spread in what people can bring. Indeed, both to either get more numbers or have a better spread on the damage you deal because of damage types, ammo, and everything.
Great. Any insights, the other guys?
I mean, there's two different perspectives to take. There's the RvB one and the outside RvB.
Yeah.
In RvB, I normally just say fly whatever you feel comfortable in. We start with the kitchen sink, and then I call my reships in a certain meta. So if the enemy fleet's down to basically a mauler wall, I'll call for kiters to come back.
Right.
So you're not just whelping stuff against the mauler wall while you grind it, but I'd rather people just fly stuff and learn to pilot their own ship that they enjoy flying than force everyone into X ship, and it just gets silly in RvB.
And that's the thing, I think that's also a good point to remember that as an FC you do not force people to come in the ships that they are coming with. So if someone brings in something shiny and complains that he actually died in that ship, then you can just whip back at his face and tell him that next time he should come in a Rifter.
There's people I do get pissed off at, people who come in Maluses when they can competently fly a good cruiser.
Yeah.
And they just sit at 150k and dump people. That's fuck you guys.
Some of the FCs in RvB that I have seen be, not flat out rejected and told to go F off, but people just really didn't listen to them, were some of the nullsec guys that came in and were like, okay, I want everyone in this ship, this is the fit, blah, blah, blah. We're RvB, we have all sorts of ships fit up, but we might not have that exact one. So it's like, dude, if you want to fight like within the next 10 minutes, it's got to be whatever we have. And, I think that's how most of us, all of us, do it. Outside of like war target fleets or, special events or something like that, we're not going to have doctrines.
Yeah, well, with nullsec, we do have the doctrines, and we do allow other people in, like the Maluses, as you mentioned. While, having a damper in your fleet can sometimes be very cool, but we actually, in the big fleet fights in nullsec, we have a special fleet specifically made for those kind of ships. So once we fill out a whole fleet of like battleships and logistics, we tend to remove the frigates because they will have their own fleet to play with.
Yeah, you're talking about the major blocks fight of 2000s.
Yes.
I have to say that myself, coming from a nullsec heavy environment, when I came into RvB the first time, I was kind of attempting, like Malus says, to just get people formed into the same doctrine, and it's a real adaptation if you're considering joining RvB and starting as an FC. Is that most people in RvB don't give a fuck about what you think. They are here to have some fun, and they join fleet to have some fun. They'll follow the FC if he has an idea and they think that it's brilliant, but if they think that it's stupid, they're also going to share their opinions on it, which I think it's wonderful, because it's a small gang roaming environment. In nullsec though, the FC has much more of a authority over the fleet, as if the people don't want to join in, they kind of have to have the same ships that he's asking for, because you're in a more intense environment, and in RvB it's extremely controlled, while in null you can get jumped on by 6 times your numbers at any moment. It's just not reliable. Those are two kind of perspectives. So right now we have a fleet startup, we have fleet members, we have a fleet to fly, a ship to fly. Our members are in ships, that's good. And so we see an enemy gang. What's to look at for? What targets should he be broadcasting first? And what's to look at during the fight?
That again is very subjective to if you're looking at more RvB kind of style or the larger nullsec battles. Regarding nullsec, I usually just look out if we can alpha a DPS ship, or if we cannot alpha a DPS ship, I will look for the extras, the Hugins, those kind of things, or we will just focus on the logic. Or if we're doing capital things, I always pick out the ones that are off doctrine, the people that want to bring a Phoenix to a Naglfar fleet kind of thing.
Right. So you pick up the odd parts first.
Right. Usually because if you're looking at say an armor fleet and somebody brings in a Phoenix, it's a shield. So they're not going to have the proper tank for the proper doctrine. So that's always a weak point.
Right. And
so basically what you do is you look for the weak points, and I think that it will be the same with the nullsec or the low-sec fights. And it's not a set list, it's more of a have a look what the hostile fleet is, what your own fleet is, and it's very dynamic. Usually it's more of a priority list.
So you have to develop the capacity to instantly prioritize the enemy targets. Right? anything to add up, guys?
I think in the RvB environment, it's you kind of just it's kind of rinse and repeat on the FC style. You just primary the highest DPS, lowest tank things that come in close, and then work outwards to the higher tank, lower DPS things. So you start with thoraxes, vexors, ruptures, stuff like that, and then you work out towards the maulers and 1600 mil vexors, stuff like that.
I'm assuming, you know, Esildra has a million slave scouts behind the service, but do you guys use scouts? Do you always use the same scout, or do you go yourself with the neutral alt?
Will totally depend on where we are going. I will try and get the same scouts, you know, because once you work together and you need to explain less what you want the scout to do, because basically in nullsec, the FC, as you've said before, is at a very, you know, power position, so to speak. So when I have my stream of data coming at me, the last thing I want is to hear fleet chatter, and the first thing I want is to hear scouts and information so that I can base my decisions on that.
Great.
I just cheat and have characters in both corps, so I scout, you know, with my other guy. No, I really don't do that. I don't do that. I don't even use my neutral anymore, really. I only use that for war target stuff. I'll just pick somebody in a random frigate that has a mic, or ask in fleet if anybody wants to scout, just to give somebody else experience. If no one will, then, you know, and if I'm in something fast, I'll tool around myself, but for the most part, I just ask somebody.
I'm lazy and interesting. I always, if you're in a red fleet, you'll see a Condor following your end.
Right. I always go blindly myself as well, and that's only applying to RvB. Unless you're roaming in nullsec, then you can probably have a forward scout, which is a good thing. But in RvB, I'm just going blindly, and most of the time it worries people that they think that I don't have a plan, and I'm telling them that I don't have a plan, and they're just getting stressed out on it. But if you do get a good scout, it's hard to keep it next to you unless you're consistently in the same alliance like Esildra is, and you're in a much more controlled environment. But in RvB it's very versatile, so people come in and come off. So if you do manage to get a good scout, make sure that you email him and get him to know each other. Maybe have a little chat, a little meet with a cup of tea. And then make sure that he comes back every time you FC, because that will give you a major advantage to know exactly what the other fleet is flying and what they're doing live. And if you're doing like a hot drop or something like that, make sure that you have competent Sino pilots as well as scouts to cover them, so they, you know, they can be covered all the way through.
I find that a lot of the scouts I use actually turn into FCs at some point, so I usually lose my good scouts. But yeah, I mean, I see a lot of those guys that get comfortable talking in fleet, talking in comms, talking about ship types. So they sometimes graduate to FCing quite more quicker than other people do.
That's very true.
That is very true. We see the same kind of thing in nullsec as well. And also, the best scout you have is a spy. As, you know, Yngvarr kindly suggested with, you know, having an alt. Sometimes, you know, if you're in a massive null skill battle, you know, you cannot always have your own alt out there. So you have a small group of people who just feed intel to you. And, you know, having spies in another fleet is probably the best way to, you know, get your intel.
And it might be also a good entry point for many of you guys who are listening right now, that just speak up when you want to. If you're thinking to be an FC, just speak up to be the scout, be the Sino bitch, be the guy that does all the crap stuff, and you'll get lots of credits from the current fleet commanders, which will be able to teach you more and more every fight. And I think at the end, just send them a message, ask them if you did anything wrong, if you could profit from anything, or any comments or any suggestions, and if they're not too tired, I'm pretty sure they'll give you some hits, some tips, or some pro tips. Yeah. So you're fighting. You pretty much got your fleet. You got yourself set up. You're already going on. And then another fleet of reinforcements comes in, and you're suddenly finding yourself outnumbered. It's totally unexpected. What should be the appropriate reaction, and what should the newbie FC be looking for? Putting aside that it's completely depending on the situation again, but, you know, general tips.
I mean, it's very situational. If you get jumped and you suddenly find yourself outnumbered, then you've kind of got to make the call whether to bail or carry on fighting, and it's kind of a situational decision. Sometimes you can get away with carrying on the brawl. Sometimes just bail, cut your losses, and regroup.
It also usually depends on what you're flying and what the goal of the fleet is. See, if you're defending a specific objective, you're usually more intending to, stay on grid and actually take the brawl. But usually, when people bring reinforcements, they bring it in at the point where they think they have the upper hand. So whenever reinforcements come in, it's always a good time to, take a step back and have a look like, so what is my fleet, what is it worth, and what is the objective worth? Is there a objective?
I've actually noticed several things happening. I'm not sure if Yngvarr does it on purpose, but, usually when we fight somebody in RvB, since we're so close to our reinforcement point, you can just keep on having ships come back, and newer cruisers, newer battleships, and it just keeps on moving. And sometimes what you will see is that your fleet is taking over the enemy fleet. You're literally whelping them and grinding them, and there's only a few tanking ship left, and then you'll get a wave of ships coming in and just taking back the grid from you. And I think that's something that you can consider if you're being outnumbered and you have some people reshipping. Maybe tell them to form up at a safe and stay aligned towards the planet to land in at any time, so they come in with a big bang instead of a swift fart. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's where communicating with your fleet comes in now. I normally ask people to X-up if they're reshipping and what they're reshipping in to give me an ETA to be back on grid, and then I've got kind of a knowledge of the next few moves of the fight, so to speak, as to how it's going to play out. If 2 people X up, then I'll look at the grid and we've got 3 people left, and I'll go, yep, we'll bail. But if I get 7, 8 people X up, I'll go, yeah, we'll hold the grid till our reinforcements get in.
Great.
I'm way more lazy than that. I just tell people to reship, and if I notice that we're way too low and I don't think many people are coming back, I just bail.
Great. Let's look at flying techniques, because there's all sorts of different ship types you can fly. You can fly more kitey, more brawly, you can do drive-bys, you can do it ghetto style. So what do you guys prefer, and what would you recommend?
I recommend just trying every style once, at least a couple of times, because it also depends on what kind of ships you fly, again, regarding the doctrines that we've already earlier discussed. But if you really like the up and close kind of thing, you don't really want to do the whole kiting thing. And then again, if that is your goal and something that you enjoy doing, then why would you ever fly something brawly?
And I'm assuming it's also depending on the type of personality of the FC. Like, some FCs can't do kitey and some FCs can't do brawly at all.
Yeah, but there's only one way to find out, and that is literally by trying, which is, one of the first things we said is, how do you want to FC? Try. Just go. Just make a fleet. Go and see what you get. Try something. Try something new.
Have fun doing it.
Yeah.
I think the meta of RvB right now definitely favors kiting if you can pull it off. That's more what I like, only because I can, make sure everyone has the same range and whatnot. However, if I have like another veteran FC in my fleet, or somebody, at least an experienced scout that knows how to, figure out ranges, knows where we're coming from, and can put the fleet between us and him and get us a warp in, then I'll do Broly all day, because it catches them off guard and we kill a lot of crap.
Any inputs, Iredude?
No, I agree completely with Malus. Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, Brawly or Kitey for the most part, but I do try to give some sort of range that I want the fleet to be able to hit at and project damage to. But you know, Kitey or Brawly, it doesn't matter to me. I don't dislike one or the other.
Yeah, I think the meta of RvB drives it more towards kiting, simply because the two metas that we kind of get to roll are armor brawl or shield kite, and shield kite kind of trumps armor brawl more or less every time.
Yeah, some of the events like the BLT certainly lend themselves to more brawly fights, so you know what you're going to be getting into. More of the roaming, you're going to see more kitey fleets out there.
We got a question from Cheba in the chat asking, when FCing versus a large group, it's so difficult to recognize what's on the grid and choose the best target to select. Also, how to know when something new has landed on the grid? I would personally just keep on FCing, scroll down with your, there's this kind of nice button on your ship that you can click, and it will have circles of different ranges so you can see new people coming in.
Yeah, I mean, with the new warp animation, you can see a flash when something comes in anyway. I always play scrolled out so I can see how the grid's looking, where we're positioned, new things that warp in kind of attract your attention because they ping in from the side of the screen.
Right.
Indeed, that's nothing different with nullsec. You just are zoomed out and you have a look at your overview. And since you're already shooting something, it's not really, that much different. If you get new targets on grid, you just look at the ranges you're fighting at and what your fleet's capabilities are. And when you know something new has landed on grid, is usually very easy to see, because in the nullsec fights, people don't stream one by one onto the grid. It's usually a big fleet warping in or jumping in. And as much as people say that Eve doesn't have sound, sometimes as an FC you want to have that sound on because you can hear the jump sounds, or you can hear the warp sound.
And definitely the sounds for the Sino when somebody hot drops you are extremely loud. Unless they fixed that, but I haven't seen it yet.
You have pretty little sliders these days.
Oh. CCP may be better, damn it. So yeah, just keep your eyes scrolled off. There's no point in looking at your fancy cute ship with all of its details. You're playing Eve, which is pretty much looking at menus and clicking on stuff from your overviews. And as far as fighting versus a large group, I usually just sort my overview by range. Unless, you're flying extremely brawly stuff and you have the entire fleet tackle at 0 next to you, then you can just sort in another matter. But going by range usually work. I'll broadcast targets, and if the list becomes bigger, I'll just see it from the scroll down bar.
I disagree with looking at your ship, though. I keep mine zoomed in to make little pew 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 sounds every time I'm shooting. It just makes the game more enjoyable.
I guess everybody is part of pie. So, things to look at during combat. Any points?
Well, I'll put a note out there. I always have two overview tabs up. One that just shows hostile people, and one that shows both my fleet and hostiles.
Mine shows both at the same time.
Really? I always ping to the one with my fleet on just to check numbers every minute or so. Just to make sure things are swinging our way or their way or whatever, and check ranges. And looking at zoom out, look at the grid, look where your fleet is positioned compared to their fleet. If they're strung out, if you're strung out, etc. It's just knowing how to position your fleet, really. And geckos. If a VNI warps in RvB and drops geckos, kill them.
For me, it really depends in the nullsec battles on what you're FCing. See, if I'm FCing a capital fleet, I look at whole different things than when I'm FCing say a battleship fleet. The capital fleets are usually a little bit more relaxed because you have a little bit more, overview, so to speak, and you don't really align somewhere. Alignment, yeah, but you don't really turn around ships. You just are on grid, and basically that's pretty much where you are. You don't really warp around with capitals. However, when I'm in a fleet with battleships, I usually have a couple of people in my command channel, usually like between 3 and 5 people, and I give them each a task, and I just usually chat with those people, and I ask them, hey, how's this going? Hey, how's that doing? And so that I can just focus on primarying and aligning.
You delegate certain tasks to certain people.
Delegate, yeah, definitely. Because with like the big nullsec battles, you have to delegate because it's too much information streaming at you to do it solo, and that is also one of the things where you can see the difference between a good FC and a great FC. Is how well he deals with information streams, and also one of the things in the nullsec battles is if you're FCing, usually you have multiple fleets on grid, which then also means that you're not only FCing your own grid, but or your own fleet, but also you're giving intel or tips or hints or directions to another fleet. Some of the bigger fleet battles like 6VDT with 2000 versus 2000. When I was FCing for test, I had the command over 9 whole fleets while FCing my own fleet. That gets a little hectic if you have to do everything yourself without delegation.
And that gives you the idea of how annoying hearing something useless can be when you're flying with 9 other fleets. So great, so overall, just look at your grid, delegate your stuff. Definitely don't look at doing everything yourself. Try to get comfortable with your fleet. If you're not comfortable with how you're checking things, or if you can't anchor, basically don't anchor. Give someone else the anchor and make sure that you're still within range of your target so that he's doing a proper job, but you don't have to micromanage the entire fleet.
Exactly. I don't really know how RvB does this with fleet numbers wise again, but we usually have our own whole Logi section in our comms where we will have a Logi FC who is the Logi anchor, which will be at a different point than the main fleet. So they also have their own little group on what they're focused on, what they're doing, and little chat room so that they can actually speak with between themselves.
Right. In RvB we don't fly in with logistics all the time because we're like brawly and yeah, no logistics.
For serious business like war target fleets, we do basically the same thing. Logi have their own anchor, usually their own quote-unquote Logi FC. I don't know so much if we ever really do our own speaking channel, but we definitely have our own chat channel that they can, chit-chat in. Yeah. For the most part, we're just usually yelling on new standard fleet comms. Not a whole lot to say, but usually, if the anchor goes down, somebody else will anchor up, things like that.
And how do you guys motivate your fleet? That's a very important point, because a non-motivated fleet will not really render results. So, I mean, I've heard speech of keeping your fleet entertained and active and waked up while you're waiting for the enemy. You guys have any tips or any tricks, or you're just doing random chatter?
I just act like an idiot. Keeps everyone entertained. Get serious when people actually get on grid.
You usually get insulted by Yngvarr, and yeah, just shoot the shit. And at least, even if you're in a fleet that's dead and there's nothing going on, at least start chit-chatting, because chances are people will talk, and then you'll get more and more people in fleet, and they'll be less inclined to leave if they're actually having an interesting conversation going on, or a bullshit conversation that's just fun.
Yeah, it really, for the nullsec people, depends on the fleet size. If you have a small fleet of maybe 30-40 people, sure, you have small talk with the fleet, and you have a laugh, and you make jokes, and all that kind of stuff. But if you're in the big fleets, you don't do that. You're really focused on, you know, the whole coordination. So usually the comms from the FC to the regular fleet members is pretty much only direction.
Yeah, usually that the fleet just kind of chit-chat amongst themselves for the most part. I don't really provide too much motivation myself. But, you know, when we get into combat, you know, certainly we're clearing comms, and for the most part I try to stay relatively calm and try not to freak out, because that certainly doesn't help anything.
And I would say for all the RvB dudes that if you log in and there's a big blue fleet or a big red fleet and your fleet's non-existent or small, just get in there and start talking. You'll at least be active and attract people that might just want to talk, and then eventually, hey, what do you know, you have enough people to actually go fight. So it's one way just to kind of get numbers rolling in.
Great. So, covered pretty much all the subjects that I had, faster than I thought we would. Derp. We have, I'm gonna start asking you guys if you have questions on how to start FCs, or if you would like to ask specific questions to people who are in here. I'm gonna repeat their names. There's Yngvarr, Malus, Phoenix, Iredude, and Esildra from CFC. Just post them in the chat and we'll send them through. We'll give you an answer. So just go ahead and we'll start the Q&A. Also, to start off, Haller, sorry, I'm just gonna say Davion is his name, sending me some questions. So to start off, do you have your overview set up in a different fashion to your fleet members? If so, what aspects do you monitor critically?
To be honest, I don't really care how my fleet members have their overview settings. Sometimes I will literally tell them dictors only or battleships only, depending on what's going on. Personally, I have about 5 different overviews loaded, and I just scroll between them depending on what I'm doing, really.
Do you sort
it's very situational.
Do you sort your overview like battleships, frigates, cruisers?
No, I have one where I have everything on it, including drones, boss mods, etc. I have one with only fleets. I have one with only dictors and hictors. I have one for only warp out locations, so moons, belts, planets, anything.
Okay.
And I have one that I have, you know, the Sarah's overview pack, so I can literally just scroll down to what the situation needs and what kind of overview I need for that.
Yep. So save different setups for different kind of situations. What about the other guys?
Mine is, let's see, I'm trying to remember what I even have on there. Warp out, loot, because, you know, gotta make money. I think just my fleet, just the enemies, and then a combined enemies and my fleet are what I typically use. And I have, you know, all sorts of things saved, so I'll adjust them if I need to. Like if we're going on RvB gank or something like that, I'll flip some things around. But for the most part, those are the 5 that I use day to day.
Yeah, my day-to-day ones are my fleet, combined fleets, and looting. And then for anything outside RvB, I've got like cap only, BS only, all that stuff set up, but they rarely get used.
I personally just merge both enemies and friendlies on the same overview so I can monitor how many friendlies I have through the combat. It doesn't work for big blocks of 2000 versus 2000. That just overcluster your overview. But in your general roaming, it's actually pretty helpful because you get insta feed of information from how many numbers you have compared to the enemy fleet. And you know exactly who they are, how far they are from you, etc, etc.
Yeah, 99% of the time, my overview I have selected is the combined my fleet and enemies.
So, Number Magician 2 asks, so many crazy ships, what's a good way to learn ship types for calling targets?
Play the game a lot.
Yeah, I found, for me, I mean, that was one of the things I was always worried about when I was thinking about FCing was, you know, what am I going to be calling as a primary? So I just started flying as many ships as I could, as much as I could. So that's one of the reasons why I joined RvB. I get to fly a lot of different frigs, desis, cruisers, battleships. I mean, we certainly get into more entertaining ships during war, but flying as much as I could certainly helped.
Yeah, look at kill boards, how people normally fit them. Look if you look at Mauler fits, people normally have 1600mm plates on there. Just look through different fits, see what kind of damage they do, what kind of tank they've got. Play around on something like EFT or Pi for fitting tools.
In all honesty, I don't usually look at those things. I first, when I started FCing, because we're looking at new and up and coming FCs here, is I would have a look at what the logistic ships are and what the special ships are. The ones with the damps, jammers, falcons kind of thing, the Malus that we've spoken about before. All those things that may make your job a lot harder, and only last do you really go for the DPS ships, because
yeah, like I said, I spent a lot of time on the Eve Uni wiki and basically just went through each and every ship and got a general idea of what the bonuses were, so I kind of knew how people would fit them. But even then, I didn't really have a good idea of everything until I just started flying everything. Just like Iredude said, get into it, fly it around once or twice, and then you kind of, to me, that made me remember, hey, this is how that ship is probably fit. So is it damage? Is it tank?
So, Tash asks, when no one steps up to the scouts, bait, etc., do you just nominate someone?
Yes, if for whatever magic reason we don't have a scout set up, we do appoint one, but that's hardly the case in the big nullsec, because there's always the same couple of people that will always help you out. So it's rare, but when I was starting, with my whole FCing, sure, I would just ask, hey, frigates, can you put an X in fleet, and do you have a microphone? And I would just literally ask people to, hey, can you go here? Hey, can you go there? And, sometimes that still happens. Sure, just nominate people.
Take out the whip and give a few slashes.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that. And for bait, usually just look at what ships are in your fleet. You know what's going to be tanking. Like, hey, dude, can you go jump through the gate and then just burn back and let them shoot you and jump again so we can, get them aggroed.
Keep on asking questions, guys. We got a lot more time.
I'm gonna go make a cup of tea. You can lose me for 2 minutes.
Alright, another cup. Anything you guys would like to add up?
I'd like to start a donation drive to get Yngvarr a tea maker that just sits on his desk so he doesn't have to get up anymore. Also, probably a bedpan.
The man does drink a lot of tea.
Yeah. I wonder where that tea goes afterwards. Must have a couple of bottles. So far we've pretty much made a point that if you want to start as an FC, you have two choices. You can either start a fleet, grow some balls and do it, or you can go it through the slow way and become a scout, become someone's FC, someone's bitch for an FC, and basically do whatever he needs to be done. And you will get some points from there. And also don't fear taking comments from other people. If you do mistakes, don't blame it on someone else. I've done mistakes before and I had to apologize to very important people to who I was looking at. And it takes a drop of integrity to make it so much further as a fleet commander. And once you went behind the whole honor aspects or the whole ego aspects, then I think you can make a lot more progress.
And it's probably worth mentioning too that if anybody's, if they're in RvB or otherwise on stream and they really want FCing, one of the safest places to do it is RvB. So if they have one or their corp allows them to, if they're not monitoring APIs or something like that, create an alt, throw it in RvB, let people know you want to FC, and I'm sure that, I can't think of a time frame in the day where somebody's not going to be like, all right, dude, you're up. And somebody will sit back and listen and make sure and give them criticism afterwards.
If you see current FC, or if you join an alliance, just look for the FCs that comes up more often that are doing the same thing that you want to do, and try to send them a mail, ask them if they can backseat you for one of your fleet and give you some comments on that, because it's really helpful, and most of the time they'll be able to see what you do wrong and what you could do better. Oh, and don't lead a fleet of rogues in a Dremel. Just a pro-life tip. Anything else you guys would like to know?
Gank shinies or stick to the typical target calling order. That really depends on if you think that you can break the shinies. I mean, as we've already discussed before, sometimes there's like no logi on the field for RvB. This gives the indication that you can gank shinies pretty easily unless they're dual tanked with ancillaries and speed tanking everything at the same time. It usually is up to the preference of the FC. In the big nullsec battles, sure, if I see a shiny, I will try and kill it. But if you can't break the reps from the big logistics that they usually have with them, then it's usually the typical target calling order.
And
yeah, for us. Oh, go ahead.
Make sure tackle the shiny first before yelling everywhere that you have a shiny, because we've seen many times people fighting something that's very expensive and end up not ham up a fleet to kill it. When they arrive on the grid, he just warps off or duck into the station or jumps to the gate. So, you know, making sure that you have that shiny available to be killed is very important. I would like to welcome Xansha from RvB Blue and Red, because he can't decide which faction is better. So he's also a fleet commander who joined us a little bit late. We're currently in the Q&A. And do you have anything else to add up? I think you have been listening through the stream.
I just got on like 5 minutes ago. I had to re-download because I just have a new computer.
You want to give the viewers a little introduction?
I'm Xansha Vala / Xansha Valor. I am a team leader for RvB. I also handle the weekly reimbursement threads. And I just try and FC and have a good time.
Sounds good.
I was going to say, though, for RvB, it's pretty much always gank shinies, because there's probably not enough reps on their side to protect them. And if you can catch them and lock them down, yeah, kill them.
Yeah, I get shiny hungry as well. Sometimes it'll ends up being a really bad idea, but I always go after them too.
Number Magician said it. Red fed, best fed. Whoop whoop.
I thought it was red fed, dead fed.
Aww.
Right, guys, I'm going to hop off and leave you guys to it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming, Yngvarr.
Take care, dudes.
Right, so do we have any more questions? If not, we'll just, I think, end it here. Oh, I also missed the question from our friend Davion. So he says, with a multi-element fleet, example Logi, Dictors, and DPS, what communication systems are the FC monitoring? It's a pretty easy one.
Well, as said before, in the big nullsec battles, I have a couple of people in my command chat who give me all the intel I ask of them. And I can just ask someone like, hey, can you just double check this? Or hey, can you double check that? And as soon as they have the answer for me, they report back. Except for the Logi, they have their own little channel under the normal Mumble channel, and whenever I ask like, "Hey, how is our Logi doing?" I usually get an instant reply. But yeah, we do split up everything, and usually the only thing that I really worry about is the overall fleet thing. Sometimes I'll let somebody else anchor, sometimes I'll let somebody else target call, and I will just, do the coordination between multiple FCs, multiple fleets, multiple systems sometimes.
It's harder for the enemy fleet to find the FC if they don't know who it is previously. Then, like, if they're gonna look for the anchor and shoot it, and you're not the guy anchoring, then it's better for your fleet and for you. Great, so if you guys are looking for a quick introduction to FCing, you can just simply apply to either Red Fed or Blue Fed. We'll surely take you on and give you some cool pro tips, or you can enjoy, if you enjoy more the null sec life, you can look and ask for your what is this?
It is a shameless plug of the always gank shinies whenever you can, in the most hilarious way you can find.
Yeah, that kill. That's a true moving my entire house without giving a shit thing.
Yeah, there's a article being written about this kill for the Matani Central, which should be up probably today or tomorrow, I think. It's gonna be a very good one, I can tell you that.
So everyone give a good applause to Esildra for participating in that. Remember that Esildra is a super capital fleet commander for CFC, so he's got his experience. And if you have any question, my best recommendation is to ask either your CEO, send him the mail, or pick him up on comms if you have comms, or through your corp chatter, and he's going to redirect you to a fleet commander for the alliance or somebody that is competent enough to answer your question. And fleet commanders are looked for in all alliances. It's really good to have and really good to play with. So I'll end it here, and everyone, thanks for coming. There will be a recorded and edited version of this on YouTube, as well as the Twitch account will have the highlight. Thank you for coming.